Most techs who fail NICET Level 1 don't fail because they're a bad technician. They fail because they missed the 5 fundamental steps they need to understand when it comes to taking a NICET Level 1 exam. And one of these mistakes are so common that NICET builds multiple questions around this one mistake that most technicians make. So by the end of this video, you'll understand the 5 fundamentals that NICET Level 1 is built on, how they come up with the exam questions, and how you can think like a test taker and not a technician. So let's get straight into it. So let's start with fundamental number 1. I want you to think system purpose and not just device types. When NICET designed their questioning, they more often look like device questions, so you may think these questions are easy, but these are purposeful questions, theory-based and scenario-based type questions, which drive you to think and how to search for the answers within the code books. So let's look inside NFPA 72 Chapter 10. This is where we're going to go over the fundamentals of a fire alarm system. So as you see here, it's very important to tab up your book so that way you can get straight to the chapters, straight to the codes, exactly where you need to go. But inside Chapter 10, it talks about the application, it talks about the equipment, the purpose of a fire alarm system, the initiating devices, how the initiating devices should comply. When it talks about the abandoned fire alarm equipment, they're referring to any old existing wire that is not being used. Any devices that are not being used need to be taken out, removed, thrown away. It should not be in the building. There should be no dead cables inside of the building on a fire alarm system. And also they talk about the inspection and testing in 10.5.3. So these are the chapters and sections that you would want to highlight, pay attention to, because NICET Level 1 will pull a lot of their questioning from Chapter 10. So you want to make sure you mark down Chapter 10. And if you stay to the end, you'll be able to download a cheat sheet so you'll be able to know all the codes you need to know for NICET Level 1. So as a fire alarm technician, when you're studying for NICET, this is not just so you can pass the test. This is so you can understand how the fire alarm system is supposed to perform and how you're supposed to install these devices. It's a life safety system for emergency responses to notify the occupants that there's an emergency inside the building. Over the years, I've learned how to actually take the NICET exam. I didn't cram information down into my brain module to try to remember each and every one of these particular codes. I started to understand how to identify the key words in the question that NICET was asking me. So once I was able to identify the key words, I then was able to get to the book, rather it be 72, rather it be 70, IBC, 101, whatever book it was referring me to, I then know what chapter I need to get to, rather if it's talking about performance or rather if it's talking about wiring. I know what chapter to go to. Then after that, I have to dial down deeper to actually find the code reference. So once I speed past the book and then speed past the actual chapter, I now have a little bit more time to go through the code to actually find the code that I'm looking for to answer the question. And that's the type of misunderstanding that leads directly to my next point. Now, the second fundamental I want to go over is the device functions, not the device types. When you're preparing for the NICET exam, they don't care if you know what a duct detector is. They want to know if you know what the operation of the duct detector is supposed to do. What are the output functions that is required for a duct detector when it's either in supervisory or in alarm. And at Level 1, NICET tests for functional behavior, not installation rules. So we're going to go over 2 chapters you want to mark down, Chapter 17 and Chapter 21. So let's get straight into Chapter 17. Chapter 17 talks about the initiating devices, and this is going to give you all the performance measures when it comes to initiating devices, manual pull stations, smoke detectors, duct detectors, heat detectors, all of these input devices, what is required by NFPA 72 for it to do, placement, mounting height, and different things like that. So some of the things you're going to want to highlight inside Chapter 17 is 14.5.4, and this is all apparatus requiring rewind or resetting to maintain normal operation shall rewound and reset as promptly as possible after each test alarm. So if you're still dealing with, I would say like a system that is a coded type of system, more so the McCullough type of system, there still may be these old type systems out there where a pull station will go into alarm and that pull station will have to physically be rewound. So that way, if that device need to be used again, it can sound the alarm in the rounds that it's supposed to sound, rather be 4, 1, or 4. You may see this out there, you may not see this out there. This may be a test question, this may not be a test question, but there's still information you need to know as a fire alarm technician. Now, another code reference you should know is 17.6.3.1.1, and this is about spacing. one of the following requirements shall apply. The distance between detectors shall not exceed their listed spacing, and there shall be detectors within a distance of 1/2 the listed spacing measured at right angles from the wall or partition existing upwards within the top 15% of the ceiling height. Now, what this is saying is if you have a room, let's say 100 feet by 100 feet, we're going to give an easy dimension. The first smoke detector is the 0.7 rule. So if a smoke detector is 30 feet spacing, that first and last smoke detector that's being installed should be half the distance, which is 15 feet. Then every smoke after that should be 30 feet. Then that last smoke to the wall should be 15 feet. These two 15 feet will give you 30 feet spacing, and every smoke in between will also give you 30 feet spacing. So this is what the explanation is of that particular code. If you could visualize that, that is the reason why we install smoke detectors at the 0.7 rule, 15 feet for the first smoke and 15 feet for the last one. Now, as we get into chapter 21, which is the emergency control functions, this is where they're talking about elevators, elevator recall, primary, alternate recall, what it should do, how it should operate, what other codes you should look at in reference to this material when you actually either taking this test or even installing a fire alarm system. So some codes you need to pay attention to is 21.3. This is talking about elevator phase 1 emergency recall operation. Phase 1 would be the primary elevator recall. If the elevator lobby smoke detector goes into alarm on the second floor or any other floor, and the primary relay should kick in to send that elevator to the first floor. Now, when it talks about the alternate, another code reference you should know is 21.3.5.1. A lobby smoke detector shall be located on the ceiling within 21 feet of the elevator lobby. So if you have an elevator lobby smoke detector, it should be no more than 21 feet from the center line of that elevator. So if you have 3 elevators in a bank, each one of those elevators need a smoke detector in front of it for elevator recall. So remember, when you're taking a NICET exam, it's definitely not about memorization. It's how you can navigate the code book. The quicker you can identify what the keywords are, is the quicker you get to the book, is the quicker you can get to the chapter, which will give you more time to actually find the code reference when you're sifting through all of these particular codes. So that's why it's very important to understand how you should think like a technician, and also how you should think like a technician when you're taking a NICET exam, because I want you to pass this the first time when you take it. So now let's move on to fundamental number 3. That is alarm versus trouble versus supervisory. Believe it or not, this is the most failed concept when it comes to taking a test on NICET Level 1. Each alarm, supervisory, and trouble signal has a different priority and has a different meaning. So if a smoke detector is active, that is usually an alarm event. If a supervisory is active, that is usually a tamper event. If you get a low battery condition or open wire, that is usually a trouble condition. And depending on a priority level will depend on how Central Station will handle this particular signal. If it's a priority 1, like an alarm, they're gonna dispatch the fire department. And if it's a priority 2 or either priority 3, you're gonna get an email to either the alarm company and also an email to the client, maybe a text message or phone call. Depending on the type of signal they get and depending on the priority level will determine how they're gonna respond to this particular signal. And you need to understand how these signals actually work when you actually even explaining it to a customer or even understanding how they function when you're taking your NICET exam. So inside NFPA 72, we're gonna get inside of chapter 3, and I want you to mark down chapter 3. So far, chapter 3, chapter 10, chapter 17, and chapter 21 are some very important chapters when it comes to taking your NICET Level 1 exam. So let's get to chapter 3. Chapter 3 is all about the definitions. It's going to give you the definitions of AHJ, which is your authority having jurisdiction. That is 3.2.2. It's going to give you the definition of an alarm verification feature. What is an alarm verification feature? How do you use it? And why would you want to use it? And what is it for? It will give you the ancillary functions, what an annunciator is, the apartment buildings, audible notification appliances. This is where all the acronyms that we have in the fire alarm industry, whether it be SLC, NAC, IDC, all of these terms is inside of chapter 3 definition. So you would definitely want to pay attention to this chapter if you're not familiar with the terminology inside the fire alarm industry. And don't forget, link in my description, we have NICET test exams for you. We're coming out with the Spark series, NICET Level 1 through 4 book, and we also coming out with the Fire Alarm Mastery and the Field Note Tech book. It's gonna be the pocket edition. You can stick it straight into your pocket. We have nothing but troubleshooting specific to Edwards and some other fire alarm systems, but it's more general in a nutshell. And it gives you the information, troubleshooting information you're gonna need out there to help you in the field. All right, so let's get straight back to the video. Now, the fourth fundamental, I want to talk about power supplies, and I want you to think as power as logic and not as calculations. It's a different way we're going to look at power supplies when we're taking a NICET exam. So if you understand, when you're taking a NICET exam, they're not testing you about battery math. They want to see what the primary and what the secondary power sources are for the fire alarm system. And do you know them? Do you know how they work? Do you know how they operate? And do you know how to calculate the battery loads for whatever particular system that you're installing? So inside of NFPA 72, chapter 10, 10.6 is where they talk about all power supplies and all power sources for the fire alarm system. So some of the things you want to pay attention to is 10.6.5.2.1. The location of the branch circuit disconnecting means shall permanently be identified at the control unit. So what that means is if you have a fuse disconnect that's located in a basement cellar electric room, so there should be some type of label on the fire alarm panel or next to the fire alarm panel, and also by the remote annunciator where the location of that fuse disconnect is located. Another thing you want to pay attention to is 10.6.7.2.1. The secondary power supply for the protected premise shall have sufficient capacity to operate the system under quiescent load system operating in a non-alarm condition for a minimum of 24 hours. Now, if you have a voice system, your battery should be able to sound that voice alarm for 15 minutes. If it's a non-voice system, the battery should be able to operate that fire alarm system for 5 minutes. And one way I learned this in real time is when I was working with Simplex Brunel, we did the project over at Rikers Island, and we were installing some 4100Us. And in this particular building, in building 5, is where we disconnected the power one day before, the AC power, one day before we did the final inspection with the inspector. At the moment, or at that time I was installing the system, I didn't understand what we were doing. But when we came back the next day, I had asked, why did we disconnect the power for 24 hours? What are we trying to do? And I first learned real time, when you have a voice system, the fire alarm system, depending if you have the right size batteries, and this is where you can tell if you have the right size batteries or not. If your system is disconnected for 24 hours, you come in, you sound the alarm, and if that alarm goes off for 15 minutes and you lose no more than 1 or 2 volts on your batteries, you have a good fire alarm system. The battery calculations are good to go. And that's straight from the NFPA book that I've seen in real time. And that code right there will always be imprinted in my brain because I've seen it with my hands, I've seen it with my eyes, and I've seen it in real time. So the fact of the matter is, NICET don't want you to understand what happens when the AC fell, what is supposed to function or still function if we lose primary source of power. So it's very important to understand why the primary power is there and why the secondary power is there, and to make sure that secondary power has enough power to sustain the system in whatever time frame it needs to be sustained if there's no AC present. But there's one more final mind shift that most techs don't even make. And this leads me to my 5th fundamental, how to think like code standards and not in the field like a technician. This is where I see personally a lot of these experienced techs, and I even face this myself, get burnt. I'm in the industry for some time. I've been doing the work for a whole bunch of years, and I think that I know more than I actually do without understanding what are the words inside of the book, because the words inside of the book is different from the field games that you play and troubleshooting outside in the field on a fire alarm system. So to further your knowledge, you're gonna wanna be able to be familiar with the annexes, Annex A, Annex B, and also Annex F. Annex A is where they have all the explanations of any and everything you need to know about fire alarm, the manual fire alarm box, the average ambient sound levels, the alarm conditions, the pre-alarm conditions, any and everything you need to know is in the annex. And also the definitions is going to define what these terms are, and the annex is going to explain what these terms are. And then also you have Annex B, which is your engineering guide for detection. This is what the engineer would be using when it comes to system design, evaluation, smoke detector placement, if then scenarios. And then you also have the wiring annex, which is your Annex F. It gives you the wiring diagrams for Class A, Class B, all different types of classifications when it comes to wiring your fire alarm system. So just to recap real quick, we got Chapter 3, we got Chapter 10, we got Chapter 17, we got Chapter 21, and we have the annexes that we want to pay attention to when we're taking our NICET Level 1 exam. So here's a pro tip. NICET Level 1 is a fundamental comprehension exam. It's built almost on everything we had went over in this video today. So if you want the code references that you will be able to study and pass your NICET exam, don't forget to click the link in my description. It's going to take you over to a site where you have to put your information in, and then we're going to send you the codes. We're going to send you the cheat sheet, so that way you have a study plan, know what to study, so you can pass your NICET the first time. So if you want to pass your NICET exam, the framework is very simple. You read the question, you identify the key word, you get to the book, you get to the chapter, you get to the code. That is the framework. Once you understand that, it'll be easier for you to answer any question on any level when you're taking your NICET exam. I want you to comment the word Level 1, and I'm going to send you a link to our Quizlet school, the Fire Alarm Mastery, where you'll be able to take the test for either your S98, your New York State alarm license, or even your NICET Level 1. We're building it out to where you'll have more tests to take, NICET 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in the meantime, there's plenty of questions there to help you out, to help you pass the NICET exam. And we just ask one thing. Once you go through our training and you pass the NICET exam, we want to know. We want to know, and we want you to tell the world to know, so that way we could actually become an accredited school. We could submit this information to the state, and we'll be able to give you CEU credit, so that way you could actually get credit for ongoing training for all of our training programs, and you'll never be astray to get any level of NICET, or to even keep up with compliance when it comes to recertifying your exam. You'll have the CEU credits from either just working, and you also have the CEU credits from the training program you do. So the ongoing training, the easier it is for you to renew your license and keep everything up to date. So I'll catch you in the next video, where we're going to be looking at Class A and Class B circuits, the wiring, and survivability. Fire alarm expert out. Peace.